When I walked into that house, I saw a woman whose life had been taken violently, but the story we uncovered behind her death was stranger than anything I'd seen in my 15 years of law enforcement. This is the story of Andrew Clark, a respected builder, his wife Sarah, and their friends Emily and James Parker, a story of secret lives and dark desires. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Twisted Case Files. Cedar Ridge, Colorado, population 11,000. Known for its ski slopes, farm-to-table restaurants, and close-knit community. To the outside world, it's a town where nothing bad ever happens. But under the veneer of tranquility, two couples were living a double life. Emily Parker, 34, taught yoga at a downtown studio and volunteered at the animal shelter. Her husband, James, 38, hosted Morning in the Mountains, Cedar Ridge's popular drive-time radio show. The Parkers had moved from Denver 3 years earlier in search of slower living. Their cedar-clad A-frame home sat on a wooded acre just outside town. She was warm, open. Everyone loved Emily. She had this way of making you feel like you mattered. To their friends, the Parkers embodied the good life, fulfilling work, an active social circle, and a marriage built on trust. Introducing Andrew and Sarah Clark. Just down the ridge lived Andrew and Sarah Clark. Andrew, 40, built some of Cedar Ridge's most admired homes, sleek mountain chalets with panoramic windows. Sarah, 36, was one of the town's top real estate agents. Married for 12 years, they appeared every bit the power couple. She and Andrew had that dream team vibe. They'd host these beautiful open houses and charity events. Everybody wanted to be in their circle. The Parkers and the Clarks met at a Chamber of Commerce fundraiser and quickly became inseparable. Weekends at the lake, double dates at new restaurants, holiday parties, their friendship seemed effortless. They were like the Fabulous Four, always together. They'd have these backyard dinners that went late into the night. Nothing ever seemed off, but behind closed doors, conversations turned adventurous. According to friends, it began innocently, a discussion about open relationships over wine. Soon, curiosity evolved into a pact, a consensual partner swap arrangement. They were adults, they set rules. They thought it would be fun, that it would spice things up. Nobody imagined it would end the way it did. At first, the arrangement was sporadic. A weekend at a mountain cabin, an occasional night at each other's homes. They kept it secret, bound by rules they believed would protect their marriages. For a time it seemed to work. The Clarks and the Parkers maintained their public image while exploring a private world together. But where others saw adventure, Andrew Clark saw something more. He started talking about Emily a lot, like a lot. At first we joked he had a crush. Later it stopped being funny. As months passed, Andrew's fascination with Emily grew. The thrill of their secret life became, for him, an obsession. Emily sensed a shift. Andrew's texts became more frequent, more personal. He lingered at her studio after class, offered to run errands James normally handled. What had been an arrangement built on boundaries was blurring into something else. She told me, "He's getting intense." I think we went too far. She thought if she stepped back, things would settle. She had no idea how far he'd already gone. Emily's decision to end the arrangement would set into motion a chain of events that no one, not even Andrew's wife Sarah, could stop. The Parkers and the Clarks thought they could compartmentalize. They thought rules, secrecy, and mutual respect would keep their marriages safe. But secrets, like mountain rivers, have a way of eroding even the strongest foundations. Andrew Clark had built a career on attention to detail. But the details he focused on now were Emily Parker's, her laugh, her scent, the way she moved in a yoga pose. By spring, he was spending more time thinking about Emily than on his multi-million-dollar projects. He was missing site meetings, which was unheard of. When he did show up, he'd be on his phone, distracted. We all wondered what was going on. Andrew began volunteering for tasks that James Parker usually handled. Driving Emily to community events, dropping by her studio with coffee, offering to fix minor repairs around the Parker home. Emily, ever polite, tried to draw lines without causing offense. Emily Parker was no stranger to boundaries. She had entered the arrangement with clear eyes and clear rules. But Andrew's constant attention, the texts, the accidental drop-ins, began to feel like surveillance. She said, "It's like he's everywhere. I can't breathe." She thought ending the arrangement would be awkward but necessary. In June, Emily sent a carefully worded message to both Andrew and Sarah. The arrangement was over, she wrote. It had been exciting, but it was time to refocus on their marriages. She hoped that would be the end of it. Sarah Clark had built her business on reading people, but she had ignored the signs in her own home. Andrew came back from, quote, late client meetings smelling of Emily's lavender lotion. His eyes lit up at the mention of Emily's name. She'd joke about the midlife crush, but you could tell it wasn't funny anymore. She was scared of losing him, scared of losing everything they'd built. Sarah confronted Andrew one July evening. According to her later testimony, he brushed off her concerns, accusing her of jealousy. But deep down, Sarah knew the situation was slipping beyond her control. The four friends had booked a weekend at Silver Lake months earlier. Emily hoped it would ease tensions. Andrew saw it as a last chance. What was meant to be a retreat became a crucible. They seemed normal when they checked in, laughing, carrying coolers. Nothing strange. But behind the cabin walls, cracks widened. Andrew monopolized Emily's time, taking her out on the lake alone, cornering her on the deck at night. Sarah and James noticed the tension but chalked it up to awkwardness. That Saturday night by the fire pit, Andrew crossed a line. He spoke of leaving everything behind, their spouses, their lives, and starting over together. Emily, stunned, excused herself and went to bed. Back in Cedar Ridge, Emily tried to cut off contact entirely. She stopped answering Andrew's texts, blocked his number, and avoided shared events. But Andrew found new ways to appear, at her yoga classes, at the farmer's market, even at her workplace. There'd be this guy sitting in the back of the studio. She'd look nervous. One time she asked me to walk her to her car. Emily confided in a close friend and in Sarah Clark, hoping to enlist her help. Sarah, torn between loyalty to her husband and sympathy for Emily, promised to talk to Andrew. Sarah Clark's testimony would later reveal the depth of her conflict. She loved her husband but saw his obsession clearly. She feared he might do something reckless. Yet she also feared scandal and the collapse of her business if their secret became public. She told me, if this blows up, we all go down. She was thinking like a strategist, not a wife. Sarah tried to mediate, urging Andrew to let go, to see a therapist, to focus on their marriage. But Andrew interpreted her pleas as betrayal. Desperate to end the nightmare, Emily agreed to meet Andrew one last time at a secluded park. She wanted to make him understand. It was over. I saw them talking, but it wasn't friendly. He was animated. She was backing away. Unbeknownst to them, Sarah had followed Andrew there. From a distance, she watched as Emily calmly repeated that their arrangement was finished, that his behavior was unacceptable. Andrew accused her of leading him on, of ruining his life. Sarah's heart pounded. She feared what might happen next. Her appearance broke the moment. Emily seized the chance to leave. Sarah tried to calm her husband, but inside she knew the storm had only been delayed. In the weeks after the park confrontation, Andrew's life began to unravel. He stopped showing up to job sites. He drank heavily. He ranted about Emily to Sarah, oscillating between self-pity and rage. He'd call at 2 a.m, talking about how everyone betrayed him. It was scary. Emily, meanwhile, focused on rebuilding her routine, keeping her distance, and protecting James from the full truth. She hoped Andrew would eventually move on. But Andrew was already moving toward a point of no return. What began as an adventure had turned into a dangerous fixation. The boundaries had shattered, and the path to tragedy was set. By late September, the arrangement that had once excited 4 adults had become a nightmare for 2 of them. Emily Parker was trying to reclaim her life. Andrew Clark was spiraling, and Sarah Clark, caught between them, was making choices that would haunt her forever. Andrew had always been methodical. But in the weeks after Emily cut ties, his business collapsed. Clients canceled projects. Employees quit. Friends stopped calling. Alone with his anger, he nursed a sense of betrayal that grew with each passing day. He'd call me in the middle of the night, slurring. He said, "She ruined me. She'll see." It didn't sound like Andrew anymore. In text messages later recovered by investigators, Andrew wrote of making Emily understand and of a reckoning. He purchased a handgun. He began tracking her movements online. Emily confided to friends that she felt hunted. Andrew would appear outside her studio, drive slowly past her house, send cryptic emails from new addresses. She saved them in a folder labeled evidence, but hesitated to go to the police. She didn't want to destroy his marriage. She thought if she just ignored him, he'd go away. But Andrew was not going away. He had crossed from longing into fixation. Sarah Clark lived in a private hell of her own making. She loved her husband, but feared him. She had knowledge of his threats, but no will to act on them. She worried about scandal, about losing her business, about being dragged into court. She told me, if I call the cops, everything blows up. If I do nothing, maybe it goes away. Sarah chose silence. It would prove a fatal choice. In early October, Emily received a letter in Andrew's handwriting. It said, "Meet me at the house or I'll tell James everything." Investigators later found the note among Emily's belongings. That note changed everything. It showed premeditation. It showed manipulation. Emily agreed to meet Andrew at her home the following Friday evening, hoping to put an end to the harassment once and for all. Friday, October 12th. Emily taught her evening class, tidied the studio, and texted James that she'd be home around 10. Andrew spent the day drinking and composing rambling notes in a spiral notebook. He came in around 5, bought a bottle of bourbon. He looked empty, Cell tower records later placed Andrew's phone near the Parker home at 9:42 p.m. James Parker, unaware of the storm about to hit his life, was filling in for a colleague on a late shift at the station. He texted Emily good night at 9:50. She never replied. What exactly happened inside the Parker home between 10 o'clock and 11 p.m. may never be fully known, but forensic evidence and later testimony paint a chilling picture. There were signs of a struggle in the living room. Overturned furniture, broken glass. It was violent. Prosecutors allege Andrew confronted Emily, demanding she leave James and be with him. When she refused, he snapped. Phone records show Sarah Clark parked down the street at 10:15 p.m., her headlights off. Whether she was there to prevent tragedy or to aid her husband remains disputed. She had 100 chances to call 911. She didn't. Sarah later claimed she thought Andrew only wanted to talk and that she waited to drive him home. But by the time he emerged, everything had changed. At 11:14 p.m., a neighbor called 911 reporting screams. Police arrived within minutes, but the Clarks were gone. Emily Parker lay dead from multiple stab wounds. I'll never forget the sound. It was awful. An APB went out for Andrew Clark. He and Sarah drove into the mountains, ditching the knife and Andrew's bloody shirt in a ravine. But the mountains offered no escape. By dawn, state troopers had intercepted the couple's SUV near the Utah border. Andrew was arrested without incident. Sarah was taken in for questioning. The arrest of Andrew Clark shocked Cedar Ridge, but the story was far from over. In the months to come, the community would be transfixed by revelations of the couple's double life, by questions of complicity, and by a trial that would expose every secret. By sunrise, the illusion of perfection in Cedar Ridge had shattered. Andrew Clark was in custody. Sarah Clark was under suspicion. And James Parker was a widower in shock. At the sheriff's office, detectives separated Andrew and Sarah. Andrew refused counsel at first, launching into rambling accounts of betrayal and love. Sarah's story shifted from ignorance to partial admission. He said, "You don't understand, she was supposed to be with me." It was chilling. He didn't seem to grasp he'd taken a life. Sarah claimed she believed Andrew only wanted to talk and that she waited outside. But phone records showed she had texted Andrew twice during the struggle, "Hurry" and "We need to go." James Parker learned of his wife's death from a police officer who came to the station during his shift. In one night, he lost not only his wife, but the friends he thought he knew. "She was my world, and the people I thought were our friends destroyed it." The memorial drew hundreds. Outside, news vans lined Main Street. Cedar Ridge had become a crime scene and a media spectacle. Forensic teams collected a mountain of evidence. The knife found in a ravine, Andrew's bloody clothes, Sarah's fingerprints on a letter. Digital forensics recovered deleted texts, GPS data, and Andrew's online searches for how to erase phone records. It was a meticulous case. He'd planned for secrecy, but left a trail everywhere. On November 20th, a grand jury indicted Andrew Clark on charges of first-degree murder, burglary, and evidence tampering. Sarah Clark was indicted as an accessory after the fact, and for obstruction of justice. Without Sarah, Andrew doesn't get away from that house. She knew something bad was happening, and she facilitated his escape. Cedar Ridge prided itself on being a place of trust. Now neighbors looked at each other with suspicion. Churches held vigils. Parents whispered about what to tell their children. It was a wake-up call. Evil can wear a smile, host your dinner parties, build your dream house. The trial began 8 months later. Prosecutors laid out a case of premeditated murder, fueled by obsession. The defense painted Andrew as a man in mental collapse and blamed the, quote, unconventional arrangement for creating emotional chaos. It was salacious. The partner-swapping arrangement was headline gold. But the jurors were stone-faced. James Parker testified about the secret he hadn't fully known until after Emily's death. Sarah Clark took the stand in her own defense, crying as she described a husband she could no longer control. Under cross-examination, Sarah admitted she feared Andrew might hurt Emily but did nothing to stop him. She admitted deleting texts. She admitted driving him away from the scene. That sealed her fate. She came across as complicit, not helpless. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury found Andrew Clark guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Sarah Clark was convicted of being an accessory and of obstruction of justice. She received 15 years. No sentence can bring Emily back, but at least there's some justice. Cedar Ridge exhaled, but the scars remained. Friends were lost, businesses ruined, and a community forever changed. Andrew Clark now lives in a maximum security facility. Sarah Clark will serve her time in a state women's prison. James Parker left Cedar Ridge to rebuild his life elsewhere. The home Emily loved sits empty, a silent witness to the tragedy. It wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a crime of arrogance, of people thinking they could control consequences. The story of Emily Parker is not just a story of murder. It's a story about choices, secrecy, and the slow erosion of boundaries. In the end, Cedar Ridge learned that no life is too perfect to fracture. Months after the verdict, the once idyllic streets of Cedar Ridge are quieter. The houses are the same, but the people inside them are not. Everyone who lived through the Clark Parker tragedy carries a shadow. James Parker could no longer bear the memories. He sold the house he had built with Emily and moved to a small coastal town 3 hours away. There he joined a volunteer fire department and began speaking at community forums about domestic violence and emotional manipulation. I'm not the same man, but telling our story helps me feel like Emily didn't die for nothing. He created the Emily Parker Foundation to fund counseling services for small-town victims of intimate partner abuse. Within a year, the foundation raised over $50,000. Sarah Clark entered the State Women's Correctional Facility as inmate 14,276. At first, she maintained the same brittle composure she had in court, but letters from her teenage daughter and therapy sessions began to crack the shell. She came to chapel one morning and said, "I kept quiet, and somebody died." That was the first time I heard her say it out loud. Sarah now works in the prison library and mentors other inmates about recognizing controlling relationships. She will be eligible for parole in 8 years. Andrew Clark is serving a life sentence without parole. In his first months, he refused visitors and wrote dozens of letters to no one, letters the guards confiscated. The prison psychiatrist described him as a man at war with reality. He still talks about Emily like she's alive. He blames everyone but himself. Cedar Ridge erected a small memorial near the library. Every September, residents gather to light candles and talk openly about boundaries, mental health, and respect. It's become an annual promise to do better. Our students lost an example of trust. Now we use this case in class to talk about healthy relationships. The case inspired documentaries, podcasts, and legal debates. Experts point to it as a cautionary tale of how secrecy and blurred boundaries can escalate into violence. It wasn't the open marriage alone. It was untreated obsession, denial, and a community that didn't want to see the warning signs. In the end, 3 lives were destroyed and an entire town was changed. Emily Parker's name now stands for both tragedy and transformation. James Parker continues to speak. Sarah Clark continues to serve. Andrew Clark lives with the consequences of one night's irreversible choice. Wherever there are secrets, there are risks. Cedar Ridge learned that love without boundaries can become obsession, and obsession without help can become murder. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share with friends, and also subscribe.